The stars above Earth had always been peaceful. Humanity looked up at the night sky and dreamed of meeting other civilizations. They built radio telescopes and sent messages into space. They wondered if anyone was listening. They hoped for friends among the stars. They should have hoped for something else. The Zirachi Dominion had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms. They had conquered 847 different worlds. Some species surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight. All of them failed. The Zirachi had a simple way of doing things. They arrived at a new world. They sent a message demanding surrender. If the species refused, the Zirachi destroyed them. It was efficient. It was brutal. It had never failed. Commander Thelva stood on the bridge of his warship. The ship was called Sovereign Talon. It was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Thelvis looked at the blue and green world on his screen. Earth. The 3rd planet from a yellow star. His sensors told him everything he needed to know. The planet was divided into hundreds of small nations. They fought each other constantly. They had primitive nuclear weapons. Their technology was barely capable of leaving their own atmosphere. Thelvis had seen this pattern 1,000 times before. Divided species were the easiest to conquer. They would panic. They would blame each other. They would fall apart. He pressed a button. The communication system activated. The Zirachi message broadcast in 6,000 different languages at once. The message was always the same. Surrender within 24 hours. Join the Dominion, obey, or die. Thelvis expected them to surrender in less than an hour, maybe 2 hours if they were stubborn. He had a schedule to keep. After Earth, he had 3 more primitive worlds to conquer this month. On Earth, the message arrived simultaneously on every television, radio, and computer. People stopped what they were doing. They listened to the alien voice. Some people screamed. Some people prayed. Some people refused to believe it was real. But the governments knew it was real. Their satellites had detected the massive ships in orbit. Their radar showed dozens of vessels, each larger than an aircraft carrier. Emergency meetings began immediately. The United Nations building in New York filled with leaders from every major nation. For the first time in history, old enemies sat together without arguing. The President of the United States sat next to the Premier of China. The leaders of Russia, India, Brazil, and the European Union joined them. Representatives from every nation on Earth connected through video calls. They had 24 hours to make a decision. Some wanted to surrender. They argued that fighting was useless. The aliens had technology far beyond human capability. Surrender meant survival. Others refused. They said humanity would never kneel. Better to die free than live as slaves. The debate lasted 22 hours. In the end, they voted. The decision was almost unanimous. Ambassador Maria Volkov of Russia was chosen to send the response. She sat in front of a camera. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady. She looked directly into the lens. "People of the Zirachi Dominion," she said, "we have received your message. We have discussed your terms. Our answer is no. Humanity will not surrender. We will not become your subjects. If you want this world, you will have to take it from us. And we promise you this. We will make you bleed for every inch." The message transmitted into space. 1 hour later, Thelvis received it. He read the response twice. Then he laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had heard this kind of defiance before. It never lasted long. "Activate bombardment protocol," he ordered. "Target their military installations first, then their population centers. Give them a demonstration. Break their spirit." The Zirachi fleet moved into position. Massive weapons powered up. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum. On Earth, every sensor and satellite detected the buildup. Air raid sirens began wailing in cities across the planet. People ran for shelters. Others stood in the streets, watching the sky. The first strike came at exactly 0600 GMT, a kinetic projectile traveling at a significant fraction of light speed hit the Pacific Fleet headquarters in San Diego. The explosion vaporized everything within 5 miles. The shockwave shattered windows 100 miles away. Before the debris settled, more strikes fell. The Pentagon in Washington, the Kremlin in Moscow, NORAD headquarters in Colorado, military bases across Europe, Asia, and Africa. The attacks were precise and devastating. Then the orbital lasers activated. Beams of concentrated energy stabbed down from space. They burned through buildings like paper. Shanghai's financial district melted into slag. London's Parliament building collapsed into flames. The heat was so intense that sand turned to glass. Water boiled instantly. Millions died in the first hour. Thelvis watched the destruction on his screens. He felt satisfied. This was the point where species usually surrendered. They would send desperate messages begging for mercy. He would accept their surrender. The conquest would be complete. His communication officer interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving multiple launches from the planet's surface." Thelvis frowned. "Launches? What kind?" "Nuclear missiles, sir. Hundreds of them. All targeting our fleet." Thelvis almost laughed again. "Nuclear weapons. How primitive. The Zirakhti shields could withstand the explosion of a star. What could primitive fusion bombs do?" "Ignore them," he said. "Continue bombardment." The missiles reached orbit. They detonated against the Zirakhti shields. Nuclear fire bloomed in space like deadly flowers. The shields absorbed the energy easily. Not a single Zirakhti ship was damaged. But something changed on the bridge. The crew seemed uneasy. "Sir," the sensor officer said quietly, "we're detecting more launches." "Many more. How many?" Thelvis asked. "All of them, sir. They're launching everything they have." Thelvis walked to the sensor station. He looked at the display. His eyes widened. Thousands of missiles were rising from Earth. Not just from military sites. From submarines under the ocean. From hidden silos. From mobile launchers. Every nuclear weapon on Earth was heading toward his fleet. "They're insane," someone whispered. Thelvis said nothing. He had conquered 847 worlds. He had seen species fight desperately. He had seen brave last stands. But he had never seen this. A species launching every weapon of mass destruction they possessed in one simultaneous strike. The radiation alone would contaminate their own atmosphere. The electromagnetic pulses would destroy their own electronics. They were willing to hurt themselves just to hurt their enemy. For the first time in his long career, Commander Thelvis felt something cold in his chest. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. These humans were not acting rationally. Rational species surrendered when faced with superior force. These humans were doing the opposite. The nuclear weapons continued to explode against the shields. The shields held. But the display showed something else. Among the nuclear missiles were other objects. Smaller ones. Faster ones. They were moving in strange patterns. "What are those?" Thelvis demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're not nuclear. They're swarms. Millions of small objects." Before the officer could say more, alarms blared across the ship. The swarms had reached the fleet. They were drones. Tiny automated weapons. Each carried a small explosive charge. Individually, they were harmless. But there were millions of them. They swarmed over the Zirakhti ships like insects. They found weak points. Sensor arrays, communication antennas, shield generators. 3 cruisers went dark as their systems failed. Thelvis stared at his screens in disbelief. These primitives had hidden weapons. They had planned for this. They had prepared. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath Colorado, General James Okonkwo watched the battle displays. Beside him, Dr. Sarah Chen coordinated with scientists and military leaders across the planet. They were connected through networks that had been built in secret for decades. Networks that linked every major nation. Phase 1 complete, Chen reported. 3 enemy ships damaged. Casualties are catastrophic on our side, but we're still fighting. Okonkwo nodded grimly. The attacks had killed millions. Cities were burning. But Earth was still fighting. He opened a channel to every military base still operational. "This is General Okonkwo. The aliens think we'll break. They think we'll surrender. They're wrong. We're humans. We don't surrender. We don't give up. We fight. Now show them what happens when you wake up a sleeping giant." Across Earth, in bunkers and bases and hidden installations, people heard those words. They were scared. They were grieving. But they were also angry. The aliens had made a mistake. They had attacked without understanding who they were fighting. Humanity had spent 10,000 years at war with itself. Every weapon, every tactic, every brutal lesson had been learned in blood. Now they would teach those lessons to the Zirakhti. In orbit, Commander Thelvis sent an emergency message to the Dominion homeworld. "Request reinforcements. The humans are resisting. Send the battle group." He did not know it yet, but he had just made the worst decision of his life. The reinforcements arrived 6 days later. Admiral Creshnell commanded a battle group of 200 ships. 3 of them were dreadnoughts. Each dreadnought was 10 miles long. They carried weapons that could crack planets. The Admiral expected to find Earth already conquered. Instead, he found chaos. The space around Earth looked like a graveyard. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of Xerachthi's ships mixed with pieces of human satellites. Radiation levels were dangerously high. Thousands of dead missiles drifted on ballistic trajectories. Some were nuclear, some were conventional. All of them were still active. Earth's orbital space had become a minefield. What happened here? Creshnell demanded. Commander Thelvas appeared on the communication screen. His face showed exhaustion. Behind him, crew members worked frantically at damaged stations. The humans happened, Admiral. They refuse to surrender. They've lost billions of their own people, but they keep fighting. They've turned their entire orbital space into a weapon. Creshnell studied the tactical display. Millions of objects orbited Earth at different speeds and altitudes. Any ship trying to approach would face constant impacts. The humans had created a barrier of their own debris and weapons. They were trapping themselves on their planet. They're insane, Creshnell said. Yes, sir. That's what makes them dangerous. Creshnell made his decision. We'll bombard them from maximum range. Charge the singularity cannons. We'll crack their continents from here. They can't hurt us if we stay beyond their primitive weapons. The 3 dreadnoughts moved into position. They were far from Earth, too far for human missiles to reach. The singularity cannons began charging. These weapons created miniature black holes. They could punch through planetary crust. One shot could trigger earthquakes across an entire continent. 3 dreadnoughts meant 3 shots, 3 continents destroyed. Earth would break. The charging process took 2 hours. During that time, something strange started happening. Systems began failing across the fleet. First, communication channels went silent. Then navigation systems showed impossible readings. Sensors reported phantom ships. The Xerathi crews scrambled to fix the problems. What's causing this? Creshnell shouted. His chief engineer ran diagnostics. Unknown, sir. It's like a virus. Something in our computer systems. But that's impossible. Our systems are isolated. Nothing can penetrate them remotely. In a bunker beneath Geneva, Switzerland, a team of human hackers celebrated. They had done something no one thought possible. During the first bombardment 6 days ago, the Xerathi had used targeting lasers to paint their targets on Earth. Those lasers carried data. The Xerathi computers had opened connections to process that data. For just a few microseconds, their isolated systems had been exposed. Human hackers had been waiting for those microseconds. They had sent a virus through the laser connection. A virus designed specifically to infiltrate Xerathi computer architecture. The hackers had reverse engineered it from a Xerathi probe that crashed on Earth 40 years ago. That probe had been a secret. Governments had studied it in hidden facilities. They had learned enough. How long will it last? Asked Colonel James Okonkwo. The lead hacker shook her head. Hours, maybe a day. They'll purge it eventually, but we don't need long. Then we launch now, Okonkwo said. He activated the communication line to Dr. Sarah Chen. Chen was at another facility. This one was deeper underground. It was built beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been constructed in secret 15 years ago. Its existence violated every international treaty about weapons in space. Nobody cared about treaties anymore. Project Nightfall is ready, Chen reported. We can launch on your order. Do it, Okonkwo said. Across Earth, hidden doors opened in mountains and deserts. Launch tubes that had been disguised as natural rock formations revealed themselves. 1,000 missiles rose into the sky. But these were different from the nuclear weapons. These missiles were experimental. They used technology that humans had barely understood until they captured that Xerathi probe. Slipspace drives. The Xerathi could travel faster than light by slipping into an alternate dimension. Humans had figured out the basic principle. Their version was crude. It was unstable. Tests showed that 40% of objects sent through slipspace never came back. They vanished into unknown dimensions. They were lost forever. Okonkwo had authorized the launches anyway. 1,000 missiles entered slipspace. 400 vanished. 600 emerged exactly where they were supposed to emerge. Inside the shields of Xerathi capital ships. The missiles materialized inside engineering sections. Inside command centers. Inside weapon batteries. Then they detonated. Fusion bombs exploded at point-blank range. There were no shields to protect against internal explosions. The largest dreadnought split in two. Its reactor went critical. The explosion was like a miniature supernova. 4 escort ships vaporized instantly. 10 more were heavily damaged. Admiral Kreshnel felt his ship shake. Alarms screamed. Hull breaches on 15 decks. Main power failing. Backup systems engaging. His crew was dying. He could hear their screams through the communication system. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Get out of their range." But there was no safe range. More slipspace missiles appeared. They targeted the remaining dreadnoughts. Humans didn't care about the 40% failure rate. They had built the missiles knowing that hundreds would be lost. They accepted those losses. They launched them anyway. The second dreadnought lost its main weapons. The third dreadnought's bridge took a direct hit. Admiral Kreshenel watched half his fleet die in the span of 20 minutes. Ships that had conquered worlds across the galaxy were burning, destroyed by primitives who barely understood the technology they were using. "This is impossible," he whispered. But it was happening. The Zarakthi fleet scattered. They retreated beyond the range of human missiles. They tried to regroup. But the virus in their systems was spreading. Ships couldn't coordinate. Communication was unreliable. Formation was broken. On Earth, people watched through telescopes and satellites. They saw the alien fleet retreating. Cheers erupted in military bunkers, in refugee shelters, in the ruins of destroyed cities. Humanity was winning, but the cost was terrible. The initial bombardment had killed 2 billion people. Major cities were gone. Shanghai, London, New York, Moscow, Delhi, Lagos. Billions more were injured or homeless. Nuclear radiation contaminated vast areas. The electromagnetic pulses from their own weapons had destroyed power grids. Most of Earth was without electricity. Dr. Chen looked at the casualty reports. Her hands shook. "We're killing ourselves to hurt them." "We're surviving," Okonkwo corrected. "That's what matters." General Li Wei of China contacted them through the secure channel. "The aliens are calling for more reinforcements. Our intelligence suggests they're requesting the Grand Armada." "How big?" Chen asked. 5,000 ships. Silence filled the bunker. 5,000 ships. Earth had barely survived against 200. The Grand Armada would overwhelm every defense. Earth would burn. "How long until they arrive?" Okonkwo asked. 3 weeks. "They're coming from across the galaxy." 3 weeks to prepare for extinction. 3 weeks to decide how humanity would die. Okonkwo stood up. He activated the global communication network. Every surviving military base, every government bunker, every scientist and engineer still alive. "This is General Okonkwo. The Zarakthi are sending 5,000 ships. They intend to exterminate us completely. We have 3 weeks. I'm authorizing all classified projects, everything. I don't care about treaties. I don't care about ethics. We're lifting every restriction. Dr. Chen will coordinate scientific efforts. I'll coordinate military response. If we're going to die, we're going to make them remember us." Across the planet, people got to work. Nuclear plants that had been shut down were restarted. Factories switched to 24-hour production. Scientists shared research that had been classified for decades. Old enemies worked together. Russian engineers helped American scientists. Chinese programmers worked with European hackers. Indian mathematicians solved problems alongside Brazilian physicists. Dr. Chen assembled a team for the most dangerous project. Project Pandora. It had been proposed 20 years ago and immediately banned. The project would create self-replicating nanomachines, tiny robots that could break down matter at the molecular level. They would disassemble anything they touched. Turn it into more nanomachines. They would spread like a virus, unstoppable. The problem was obvious. Once released, Project Pandora might not stop at alien ships. It might consume Earth too. It might spread through the solar system. It was doomsday in a bottle. Chen's team built it anyway. Colonel Maria Volkov led a different project, Operation Exodus. Earth was going to die. Everyone knew it. But humanity didn't have to die completely. They captured 3 Zarakthi ships during the battles. Engineers studied their slipspace drives. They modified human colony ships with the alien technology. The modifications were dangerous. The drives might explode. The ships might vanish into unknown dimensions. But some might survive. 1 million volunteers signed up. They would leave Earth before the Grand Armada arrived. They would carry human culture, human knowledge, human DNA. If Earth fell, humanity would survive somewhere in the galaxy. And someday they would return. They would have revenge. Captain James Rodriguez proposed a third option. The Grand Armada arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system 3 weeks later. 5,000 ships emerged from slipspace simultaneously. The energy signatures were so powerful that they registered on every sensor on Earth. The fleet stretched across space like a metal wall. Dreadnoughts, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carrier, ships holding thousands of smaller fighters. This was the full might of the Zarakthi Dominion. The Armada was commanded by Supreme Admiral Velshara. She was a legend among the Zarakthi. She had conquered 200 worlds personally. She had never lost a battle. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was 20 miles long. It carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Analysis of the enemy, she ordered. Her tactical officer brought up the reports. The planet has suffered massive damage from the initial strikes. Estimated 2 billion casualties. Their orbital space is contaminated with debris and active munitions. They've launched approximately 1 million civilians on colony ships. Current military strength is estimated at 40% of pre-conflict levels. Velshara studied the blue planet on her screen. It looked small, fragile. Hard to believe this tiny world had destroyed 2 Zarakthi battle groups. Hard to believe these primitives had killed 10,000 Zarakthi warriors. They got lucky, she said. They used tricks and surprise. We know their capabilities now. They have nothing left that can hurt us. Her second officer seemed uncertain. Admiral, with respect, these humans have shown unusual tactical creativity. Perhaps we should approach with caution. Velshara's eyes went cold. Caution? We are the Grand Armada. We have never been defeated. These primitives will learn the price of defiance. All ships advance to Earth orbit. Formation Delta 7. Maximum shields. Charge all weapons. The massive fleet moved forward. It took hours to cross the distance from the edge of the solar system to Earth. They moved carefully, maintaining formation. Shields at full power, sensors scanning for threats. They expected humanity's tricks. They were ready. What they weren't ready for was the silence. Where are they? Asked the tactical officer. No missile launches. No weapons fire, nothing. They're hiding, Velshara said, cowering in their bunkers, waiting for the end. But something felt wrong. The humans had fought so desperately before. Why were they silent now? Velshara studied the sensor readings. Earth's orbital space was still filled with debris and dead missiles. But there was something else. Energy readings. Faint but widespread, coming from the surface. What are those readings? She asked. Unknown, Admiral. Some kind of widespread electromagnetic activity. It's not weapons fire. It's more like power distribution, coordinated across the entire planet. On Earth, in the command bunker beneath Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the countdown. Around her, scientists from every nation monitored their stations. The Zarakthi fleet was approaching. Soon they would be in position. Soon they would begin the final bombardment. Status on Project Pandora? General Okonkwo asked. Ready, Chen replied. But General, once we release it, we can't stop it. It will consume everything. The Zarakthi ships, our debris, maybe our atmosphere, maybe the entire planet. Will it kill them? Yes, it will kill everything in orbit. Then we'll deal with the consequences if we survive. Prepare for release on my command. Across Earth, other preparations were complete. Captain Rodriguez had his 3 modified corvettes ready. They were loaded with every remaining nuclear weapon, antimatter bombs, and something new. The scientist had found a way to destabilize the Zarakthi shield harmonics. If the bombs detonated in the right sequence, they would create a cascade reaction. The shields themselves would become weapons. Colonel Maria Volkov commanded the last of Earth's space fighters. 300 pilots, 300 ships, all of them modified with Zarakthi technology, all of them on suicide missions. The pilots had said goodbye to their families. They had made their peace. Now they waited for the order to launch. How long? Volkov asked. The Armada will be in position in 30 minutes, reported the tactical officer. They're moving into standard bombardment formation. Volkov opened the channel to her pilots. This is your commander. In 30 minutes we launch. We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. We're going to die. But we're going to take as many of them with us as we can. We're human. We don't surrender. We don't give up. We fight until the last breath. For Earth, 300 voices responded. For Earth. In space, the Grand Armada reached Earth orbit. 5,000 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The coordination of so many vessels, the discipline of the Zirathi crews. They had practiced this maneuver on 800 other worlds. They were efficient, precise, unstoppable. Supreme Admiral Velshara opened a channel to Earth. Humans of Earth, this is your final moment. We gave you chances to surrender. You refused. Now you face extinction. Your species will be erased from history. No one will remember you existed. This is the price of defiance. She waited for a response. Begging maybe, or angry curses, or desperate pleas. She had heard them all from other species. But the humans said nothing. Then General Okonkwo's voice came through. He sounded tired, sad, but also determined. We have a saying on Earth, Okonkwo said. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. Dr. Chen, release Project Pandora. On Earth's surface, 50 different facilities activated simultaneously. Containment fields dropped. Millions of microscopic machines released into the atmosphere. They began replicating immediately, doubling every second. Each machine programmed with one purpose: consume, break down all matter, converted into more machines. The nanomachines rose into the atmosphere on thermal currents. They spread across the globe in minutes. Then they reached orbital altitude. They encountered the first piece of debris, a fragment of a destroyed satellite. The machines swarmed over it, broke it down molecule by molecule. The metal became raw atoms. The atoms became more nanomachines. What is that? Shouted the Zirathi sensor officer. I'm reading billions of small objects. They're multiplying, growing exponentially. Velshara watched her screen with growing concern. The cloud of objects was expanding. It looked like a gray fog. It consumed everything it touched. Debris, missiles, pieces of destroyed ships, and it was growing toward her fleet. Raise shields to maximum, she ordered. All ships increase shield strength. The nanomachine swarm reached the first Zirathi vessel, a destroyer on the outer edge of the formation. The machines touched the shields. The shields held for exactly 3 seconds. Then the machines adapted. They found resonance frequencies. They slipped through the shields like they weren't there. They touched the hull of the ship. The destroyer began to dissolve. The hull plating broke down. Metal became dust. Dust became more nanomachines. The crew inside screamed as their ship disintegrated around them. Within 5 minutes, the destroyer was gone, converted into trillions of microscopic machines that immediately spread to the next ship. Retreat, Velshara ordered. All ships, emergency withdrawal. But it was too late. The nanomachines spread through the fleet faster than the ships could move. Shields couldn't stop them. Weapons couldn't kill them. They were too small, too numerous, too fast. They consumed everything. In the chaos, Captain Rodriguez activated his program. The 3 corvettes slipped into slipspace. They emerged in the exact center of the Grand Armada, right next to the flagship. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The explosions were simultaneous. Nuclear weapons, antimatter charges, harmonics disruptors. The energy release was unimaginable. The flagship's shields absorbed most of it, but the harmonics disruptor did its job. The shield frequency destabilized, and because all the Zirathi ships shared harmonics, the destabilization spread. Like a wave, the cascade moved through the fleet. Shields flickered, failed, rebooted, failed again. In those moments of failure, the nanomachines poured in. They consumed ships by the hundreds. By the thousands, Velshara watched her fleet die. 5,000 ships, the pride of the Zirathi Dominion, being eaten alive by machines too small to see. Her own ship was shaking. Hull breaches on every deck. The nanomachines had reached her ship. They were spreading through the corridors, consuming everything. Equipment, walls, crew. She activated the emergency beacon, a distress call that would reach across the galaxy. This is Supreme Admiral Velshara. The Grand Armada is lost. I repeat, the Grand Armada is lost. The humans have deployed a doomsday weapon. Approach Earth at your own risk. May the Dominion, the transmission cut off. The nanomachines reached the bridge. The last thing Velshara saw was the gray cloud of machines flowing through the door. Then they touched her, started breaking her down. It didn't hurt. She simply ceased to exist. In orbit above Earth, the Grand Armada died. 5,000 ships converted to dust, to microscopic machines. The machines continued to spread. They consumed satellites, space stations, everything in Earth's orbital space. On Earth, people watched through telescopes. They saw the gray cloud, growing, spreading, coming closer to the atmosphere. "Chen," Okonkwo said quietly, "can you stop it?" I don't know. We built in a kill switch, a shutdown signal, but I don't know if it will work." Chen activated the shutdown sequence. A specific electromagnetic pulse, broadcast from every facility simultaneously. The signal reached the nanomachines. Most of them shut down. 3 days after the destruction of the Grand Armada, General Okonkwo stood in the ruins of New Delhi. The city had been hit in the first bombardment. 3 billion people once lived here. Now there were only ghosts and rubble. He walked through streets that were barely recognizable. Buildings had melted into strange shapes. The heat from the orbital lasers had turned sand to glass. That glass crunched under his boots. A young soldier accompanied him. Private Chen. She was Dr. Sarah Chen's niece. Her entire family died in the Shanghai strike except for her aunt. "Why are we here, sir?" she asked. Okonkwo pointed to the ruins. "So I remember what we're fighting for. So I don't forget the cost. Every weapon we use, every ship we destroy, it's because of this. Because they did this to us first." Before Private Chen could respond, his communication device activated. It was Dr. Chen. She sounded urgent. "General, we're receiving a transmission. Not from the Zirakthy. Someone else." Okonkwo ran back to the transport. They flew to the nearest command bunker. It was built under the ruins of Mumbai. When he arrived, Dr. Chen showed him the message. It came from ships at the edge of the solar system. Ships with markings they had never seen before. The message played. A face appeared on the screen. Not human, not Zirakthy. Something else entirely. The creature had blue skin and 4 eyes. It spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Quellen of the Astrian Concord. I represent the Galactic Council. We have been monitoring your conflict with the Zirakthy Dominion. We wish to speak with your leaders." "We come in peace." Okonkwo and Chen looked at each other. More aliens. After everything they had been through, more aliens were arriving. "Could be a trick," Chen said. "Could be genuine," Okonkwo replied. "Either way, we need to know what they want. Invite them to talk. But keep weapons ready." The Galactic Council ships approached Earth slowly. They broadcast peaceful intentions on every frequency. They transmitted their history, their culture, proof that they were not like the Zirakthy. They were a federation of 42 different species, all peaceful, all dedicated to cooperation instead of conquest. Ambassador Quellen came down to Earth in a small shuttle. He landed at a designated site in the Australian outback, one of the few places that hadn't been hit by bombardment. Okonkwo met him there. Armed guards surrounded the area. Weapons pointed at the sky. Quellen stepped out of his shuttle. He was tall, maybe 7 feet. His blue skin seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. He held up his hands, showing they were empty. "General Okonkwo, thank you for meeting with me. I know trust is difficult after what you have endured. Why are you here?" Okonkwo asked bluntly. "To offer you a choice. The Zirakthy Dominion is preparing another attack. They are gathering what remains of their fleet. Perhaps 20,000 ships. They intend to sterilize your planet. Kill every living thing. They fear you now. They fear what you represent, and you can stop them. The Galactic Council can intervene. We have laws against genocide. We can force the Zirakthy to withdraw. We can offer Earth protection, membership in the Council, access to our technology, our trade networks, peace." It sounded too good to be true. Okonkwo studied the alien's face. Those 4 eyes seemed sincere. But he had learned to be suspicious. "What do you want in return?" "You must agree to limits on your weapons. The nanomachine weapon you used, it's illegal under galactic law. Too dangerous. It could spread beyond your system, consume entire worlds. We need your agreement to never use it again. We need access to your weapons research. We need assurance that humanity will not become a threat to galactic peace." Okonkwo felt anger rising in his chest. "You want us to disarm? While the Zirakthy still exist, while they're preparing to kill us? We want to save you," Quellen said gently. "If you refuse, we cannot protect you. The Zirakthy will come. They will destroy Earth. Your species will end. Let me discuss this with my people." Quellen nodded. "You have 48 hours. After that, the Zirakthy fleet will begin moving, and we cannot help you if you reject our terms." The alien returned to his shuttle and left. Okonkwo went back to the command bunker. He called an emergency meeting. Every surviving world leader, every military commander, Every scientist who was still alive. The debate was fierce. Some wanted to accept. They argued that humanity had already lost too much. 3 billion dead, major cities destroyed, infrastructure in ruins. They couldn't survive another attack, not against 20,000 ships. Peace was the only option. Others refused. They argued that the Galactic Council would control them, limit their freedom, turn Earth into a weak, dependent state. Better to fight. Better to die free than live as prisoners. Dr. Sarah Chen spoke up. There's a third option. We don't accept their terms. But we don't fight the Zorakthi alone either. We hit them first. The room went silent. Everyone stared at her. Explain, Okonkwo said. Chen brought up a star map. The Zorakthi fleet is gathering here, at their forward base in the Kepler system. That's where they're assembling the 20,000 ships. It takes time to coordinate that many vessels. They're vulnerable right now. If we attack them there, we might destroy their fleet before it can reach Earth. We don't have ships that can travel that far. Someone objected. Yes, we do. The Exodus colony ships. We sent them out to preserve humanity. But we can recall them. We can retrofit them with weapons. Load them with our remaining nuclear arsenal. Send them to Kepler. One final strike. That's suicide, another person said. Those ships barely work. Half of them probably didn't survive the journey. And even if we get them to Kepler, the Zorakthi will destroy them easily. Maybe, Chen admitted. But what if we don't need the ships to survive? What if we just need them to get close enough to deliver their payload? Colonel Maria Volkov understood immediately. You want to turn the colony ships into missiles. Send them through slipspace. Emerge inside the Zorakthi base. Detonate everything. Exactly, Chen said. It's the same tactic we used against the Grand Armada, but on a larger scale. If it works, we destroy their fleet before it leaves. If it fails, we're no worse off than we are now. The debate continued for 12 hours. Finally, they voted. The decision was close, but the majority agreed. They would reject the Galactic Council's terms. They would attack the Zorakthi first. General Okonkwo delivered the message to Ambassador Quellen personally. We appreciate your offer, but we cannot accept your conditions. Humanity will not disarm. We will not surrender our freedom for safety. Quellen's 4 eyes showed sadness. Then you choose extinction. I'm sorry. Maybe, Okonkwo said. Or maybe we choose something else. Something you peaceful species don't understand. We choose to fight until there's nothing left to fight with. We choose to make our enemies pay such a terrible price that they'll remember us forever. That. Irrational. That's humanity. Quellen left Earth. The Galactic Council ships withdrew to a safe distance. They would watch. But they would not help. Across human space, the recall signal went out. The Exodus ships received it. 1 million colonists who thought they would never see Earth again. Some ships refused. They wanted to live. To preserve humanity's future. To build new worlds far from the war. Those ships continued their journey into deep space. But most ships turned around. The colonists voted. They decided that running wasn't enough. Their families had died. Their world had burned. They wanted revenge, even if it cost them their lives. 70 colony ships returned to Earth orbit. Engineers worked around the clock. They stripped out life support, removed hydroponics, took out everything except the slipspace drives and weapon bays. They loaded every nuclear weapon Earth had left. They added chemical explosives. They welded antimatter charges to the hulls. They turned peaceful colony ships into flying bombs. The colonists who had returned knew they were going to die. They wrote letters to loved ones. They recorded messages for history. Captain James Rodriguez led the mission personally. He had survived the battle against the Grand Armada. Now he would lead humanity's final strike. Why are you doing this? A reporter asked him. You could stay here. Help rebuild Earth. Rodriguez looked at the camera. His eyes were hard. Because 3 billion people are dead. Because the Zorakthi think they can exterminate us without consequences. Because someone needs to teach them that humanity doesn't forgive. We don't forget. We take revenge. The 70 ships launched. They entered slipspace. The journey to the Kepler system would take 3 days. During that time, the Zorakthi continued assembling their fleet. They were confident. Earth was wounded, weak. The humans had used their most powerful weapons. What could they do with 70 ships against 20,000? They were about to find out. On the 3rd day, the colony ships emerged from slipspace. They appeared inside the Kepler system. right in the middle of the Zarakthi fleet staging area. Rodriguez looked at his screen. Thousands of ships surrounded them. Dreadnoughts, battleships, cruisers, enough firepower to crack planets, all ships. He said calmly, "It's been an honor. Execute final protocol. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone we lost." 70 ships accelerated to maximum speed. They charged toward the largest concentration of Zarakthi vessels. The Zarakthi opened fire, laser beams, plasma cannons, kinetic weapons. The colony ships had minimal shields. They were designed for transport, not combat. The weapons tore through them easily, but the ships didn't stop. Even as they burned, they kept going. The Starkiller moved through space at a fraction of light speed. It was a Zarakthi weapon from their darkest age, a time when they had destroyed entire civilizations. The weapon itself was simple, a projectile containing catalysts that would trigger runaway fusion in any star. Once activated, nothing could stop it. The star would consume itself in days, go supernova, destroy everything in the system. On Earth, panic spread. People looked up at the sun. Their sun? The source of all life. In 7 days, it would become a weapon. There was nowhere to run. The Exodus ships that had left were scattered across the galaxy. They might survive. But everyone on Earth would burn. General Okonkwo stood in the command center. Around him, military officers and scientists worked frantically. They were searching for options, ways to stop the weapon, ways to survive. But the mathematics were cruel. They didn't have ships fast enough to intercept it. They didn't have weapons powerful enough to destroy it. They didn't have time to evacuate billions of people. Dr. Sarah Chen was running calculations on every computer still working. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Her hands shook from too much caffeine. "There might be a way," she said finally. "But it's theoretical. We've never tested it. We don't even know if it's possible." "Tell me," Okonkwo said. "The Starkiller uses catalysts to trigger fusion. But what if we could neutralize the catalyst before they reach the sun? We'd need to intercept the weapon, open it, flood it with counteragents. Do we have counteragents? We can make them. The problem is delivery. The weapon is moving too fast. We can't catch it with conventional ships. We'd need to use slip space. Appear right next to it, match its velocity exactly. Any mistake and we'll miss completely." "What are the chances of success?" Chen hesitated. 5%. Maybe less. The slip space calculations are incredibly complex. We've never done anything this precise, and even if we succeed in intercepting it, we need to neutralize the catalysts perfectly. Any mistake and it triggers anyway. What happens if we do nothing? The sun goes supernova in 7 days. Everyone dies. Okonkwo looked around the room, at the tired faces, the desperate hope in their eyes. 5% is better than 0. Make it work. The next 72 hours were the most intense of humanity's existence. Scientists worked without sleeping. They synthesized the counteragents, complex chemicals designed to neutralize the Starkiller's catalysts. Engineers built a containment system, a way to flood the weapon with the counteragents once it was opened. The hardest part was the slip space calculations. The weapon was moving at 0.3 light speed. It was changing course slightly to adjust for gravitational effects. They needed to predict its exact position 4 days in advance, then program a slip space jump to appear right next to it. Matching speed, matching trajectory. The margin of error was less than 1 meter. Private Chen led the calculation team. She was the best mathematician they had. Her aunt, Dr. Sarah Chen, supervised the chemical synthesis. Together they worked to save humanity. "The calculations are done," Private Chen reported after 60 hours of continuous work.
"We have a flight path."
"A jump point. If we execute it perfectly, we'll emerge 50 meters from the weapon. And if it's not perfect," Okonkwo asked, "we'll emerge inside a star, or an empty space light years away, or we'll simply vanish into slip space forever." "Who's going to pilot the mission?" Silence fell. Everyone knew it was a one-way trip. Even if they succeeded, even if they stopped the Starkiller, they wouldn't have enough fuel to return. They would drift in space until life support failed. Colonel Maria Volkov stepped forward. "I'll go. I've piloted slip space jumps before. I survived the battle against the Grand Armada. If anyone can do this, it's me." "You'll need a team," Okonkwo said. "Engineers to open the weapon. Scientists to deploy the counteragents." 12 people volunteered. They were the best Earth had. Engineers who had worked on captured Zarakthi technology. scientists who understood exotic chemistry, pilots who had flown combat missions. They all knew they were going to die. They volunteered anyway. The ship they used was a modified frigate, one of the last human ships still functional. They loaded it with the counteragents, the containment system, everything they would need. They also loaded a nuclear weapon, a backup plan. If they couldn't neutralize the Starkiller, they would try to destroy it completely. It probably wouldn't work, but it was better than nothing. The launch happened 96 hours after the Starkiller was detected, 3 days before it would reach the sun. The modified frigate rose from Earth's surface. People watched from their shelters, from bunkers, from the ruins of cities. They watched the ship climb into orbit, accelerate, then vanish into slip space. Inside the ship, Colonel Volkov gripped the controls. The slip space calculations loaded into the navigation computer. The jump would take them across the solar system, to a point 4 billion kilometers from Earth, where the Starkiller would be in exactly 17 hours. Everyone strapped in? She asked. Her crew confirmed. They were ready. Volkov initiated the jump. Reality twisted. Space bent. The ship slipped between dimensions. For the crew, it felt like falling and flying at the same time, like existing and not existing. The human mind wasn't built to understand slip space. It was nauseating, terrifying. But it lasted only seconds. They emerged. Volkov checked their position. Her heart nearly stopped. They were off course. Not by much. Just 800 meters. But at 0.3 light speed, 800 meters was too far. They were going to miss the weapon. Firing thrusters, she shouted. Emergency burn. The frigate's engines screamed. They pushed to maximum, burning fuel at an unsustainable rate. The ship shuddered. Acceleration pressed everyone back into their seats. Volkov watched the distance counter. 800 meters, 600 meters, 400 meters. We're not going to make it, someone said. Yes, we are, Volkov growled. She pushed the engines beyond safety limits. Warning alarms blared. The engine temperature was critical. They were going to fail, but they just needed a few more seconds. 100 meters. 100 meters. 50 meters, the engines exploded. The ship went dark. Emergency power kicked in. But they were close enough. Volkov activated the magnetic grapples. Metal arms extended from the frigate. They locked onto the Starkiller's hull. The impact nearly tore the frigate apart, but the grapples held. We're attached, Volkov said. Engineering team, you're up. The engineers moved quickly. They put on spacesuits, opened the airlock, moved across to the Starkiller. The weapon was enormous, 200 meters long, made of materials they barely understood. But they had studied captured Zirakthy technology. They knew where the access panels were. They cut through the hull using plasma torches. The metal resisted. It took 30 minutes to create an opening. Every minute, the weapon got closer to the sun. They were running out of time. Finally, they broke through. Inside the weapon was a containment sphere. That's where the catalysts were stored. The sphere was protected by multiple layers of shielding. They needed to penetrate all of them. Dr. Chen, the lead engineer, called. We need your counteragents. Dr. Sarah Chen had been monitoring from Earth. She sent the final instructions. The precise mixture, the exact quantities. The engineers prepared the injection system. But there was a problem. The shielding was too strong. They couldn't penetrate it with their equipment. We need to use the nuclear weapon, the engineer said. Crack the shielding, then flood the containment sphere with counteragents. That might trigger the catalyst early, Chen warned. The sun would go supernova immediately. It's the only option we have. Colonel Volkov made the decision. Do it. If we fail trying. They positioned the nuclear weapon against the containment sphere. Set it for minimum yield, just enough to crack the shielding. They deployed the counteragent system. Set it to activate immediately after the detonation. Then they retreated to the frigate. Detonation in 10 seconds, Volkov announced. Everyone hold on. The nuclear weapon exploded. In space, there's no shockwave. No fireball. Just pure energy. The energy cracked the containment sphere's shielding. For a brief moment, the catalysts were exposed. The counteragents flooded in. Complex chemicals met exotic matter. A reaction began. On Earth, scientists watched through telescopes. They held their breath. If this didn't work, the sun would start dying in seconds. They would know immediately. Solar output would increase. Radiation levels would spike. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The sun remained stable. Normal output, normal radiation, it worked, someone whispered. Then louder, it worked. The catalysts are neutralized. Celebration erupted across Earth in bunkers, in shelters, in the ruins of cities. People cried, hugged, cheered. They had done it. They had stopped the Star Killer. Earth would survive. But in space, Colonel Volkov and her crew faced reality. The nuclear detonation had damaged their ship further. Life support was failing. Engines were destroyed. Communications were damaged. They had saved Earth, but they were stranded, drifting in space with no way home. How long do we have? Volkov asked. Oxygen for maybe 48 hours, the engineer said. Less if we can't fix the carbon dioxide scrubbers. Volkov opened a channel to Earth. The signal was weak, but it got through. This is Colonel Volkov. Mission successful. The Star Killer is neutralized. But we're stranded. Our ship is too damaged to return. We're not coming home. On Earth, General Okonkwo received the message. His face showed grief.